welcome to Inside the 90, the podcast where we talk about what it looks like to choose to live in a 90-day world of EOS. And today I'm very excited. We've had a few sessions with different, organizations and different people around on EOS and different implementers. And we decided that really right now would be a cool conversation for us to talk a little bit about how we're running on EOS and what that looks like for us. So I'm excited to be here today. I'm Jami Mullikin. I'm your host. I'm also the president of Wonder. And here today I've got Warren Griffith. Warren's also on our team at Wonder, and he's serving as our integrator.
Yep. Yeah, thanks for having me, Jami. I appreciate you having me on the podcast today. I'd really like to just start off and just ask you how your entrepreneurial journey began.
So that's it's a funny question. Before I ever knew the word visionary or integrator, I, in high school, actually just loved to draw. That's what I always did. I was never great academically, but I loved drawing, and just that's how I, doodled in class.
Yeah.
And both my parents were entrepreneurs and owned their own business. Back then, it was just called a small business owner, so it wasn't really entrepreneurial. But I grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, had the opportunity to go to a high school that was called the Fine Arts Center. Mm-hmm. So where most people in high school really focused on the academics, trying to get into college that way. I had the opportunity to go to a school where I got to draw and doodle and be exposed to other things. And I had a teacher there, and it was called a graphic communications class. And he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't know." And he was like, "Well, do you like to draw and paint?" And I was like, "I do, but I don't like to come up with whatever I want to do." I was like, "I like someone like you, teacher, to give me an assignment, and then I can go do that." And he goes, "Oh, well, you shouldn't be a fine artist. He's like, you should be a graphic designer." I was like, "What's that?" So my journey really started with in high school enjoying drawing, and then figuring out how to make a living with that. Yeah. And so I found a college that had a graphic design degree. Winthrop University here in South Carolina, and really had a plan that said, I'm going to go get a graphic design degree. I'm going to get out of college. I'm going to work in advertising and start an ad agency within 5 years. Yeah. So that was really the very beginning of me in my entrepreneurial, journey. And then that led to coming out of school, getting into the advertising world. Landed with some great creative shops early in my career. I got very lucky. And then that 5-year plan, 3 years in, I just couldn't do it anymore. So I decided that.
I know the feeling.
Yeah. At 26, I was like, all right, now's the time. I just got married. I'm going to start my own thing. So I, jumped ship and started an agency in 1998. Mm-hmm. And that was really where it all began for me. And we joke and talk about back in the 1900s, that's when we met. So I think we met in 98 or 99.
That's right. Yep.
So, that's my beginning. I'll talk a little bit more about where we went from there, but kicking that back to you, like what was your journey when you started as a, I guess began your career, and when did that become entrepreneurial?
Yeah. I mean, I started my career in advertising as well, way back in the early mid-90s with a big agency, moved to a small agency, and then I ended up, through the years, ended up with my own agency, and that was it was a great experience. And I'm an entrepreneur at heart, but I think for me, owning my own business just wasn't a good fit. It was one of those things I had to figure out. It's like we talk about with the visionary integrator role. As the owner of the company, the CEO of my own company, it wasn't the right fit. Yeah. And so I went through the agency world. I've got tons of experience in the agency world. I've worn a lot of different hats, and always had that entrepreneurial spirit. So I always wanted to do my own thing, and have done it several times. Have owned several businesses, but my last stint was 10 years of owning my own agency. But yeah, so that's really been my world. But it was really for me trying to figure out in that whole experience what was the right seat for me. Where I wanted to be, and trying to figure all of that out. So that really has been kind of my journey through being, starting in my own business, and then going through the process of figuring out what makes me happy, where I want to be, what I want to do, and then getting to the point where I am today.
Yeah. What in that, so through those different roles, like kind of hit the high level, like what size teams have you been a part of? What types of organizations? And
So
then,
yeah, big agency, small agency, in-house marketing group that I was a part of, a very small team that grew to, it was like 3 or 4 of us that grew to 50 people, doing millions of dollars worth of marketing for an in-house real estate company that was very successful until the real estate market dropped out in '08.
Yeah.
So that went in the wrong direction. And then having to rebuild and start over again, and then starting my own agency up, and going through the challenge of partners and different things like that, which was can always be challenging. And then recovering from that, and then getting it back on its feet, and then building that up to 23, 25 people. And then COVID hit. And, I stood up there and said to everybody, okay, we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Everybody go home. And then that turned into 6 months. And then I had trying to get out of my lease in a huge office downtown.
Yeah.
And trying to maneuver through all of that. And, learning to work remote, which is kind of the way things are going, even still today. So all of that was, I think for me in being an entrepreneur and in business ownership, just that up and down and the grind of things changing, and you're trying to fix things, and you're trying to figure out how to keep things moving forward. It just became a grind.
Yeah.
So it's just building it up, and then it coming back down, and then trying to build it back up, and it coming back down. It just, it's just all kind of starting to wear on me.
Yeah.
And that's why I just decided, maybe this isn't the right thing for me anymore.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of the place I got to.
And when did you tap out?
I tapped out. My team kind of came to me and said, where are you?
Yeah.
You feel like you're over here, and you're just not fully engaged. And that's when I decided it was time for me to get out, because I had something else going on the side as well, another business. And I decided that my head just wasn't in the agency world as the owner of the agency anymore. And so that's when I decided to tap out in November of 22, actually,
Gotcha.
2 years ago, this month. And so I decided to sell the agency, which I did, and it was a good transition. And that agency's still doing well.
Yeah.
Still there and still doing well, and under great ownership and leadership. And so it was just time for me to walk away.
Well, so in that, from starting in the mid-'90s to then tapping out in 2022, at what point were you introduced to EOS?
I was introduced to EOS. I stumbled upon it probably in 5 years into my agency, and I was at the time just desperate for something to help me run the business.
Yeah.
I had a leadership team, and we were just kind of stumbling along. Everybody talks about their core focus and their core values, and we didn't have that. We wanted to say we had that, but we really didn't, and we weren't following anything. And I came upon EOS, and I bought the traction book, and I read it, and I loved it. I was like, "This is what we need." But I just couldn't. Then we hit a couple stumbling blocks. Half my leadership team left and started their own agency, and so I just hit a bump in the road where I just couldn't really get EOS going, and so it never really happened. So that was my first introduction to it.
Yeah.
And then the book sat on a shelf. For another 5 years. Then it just never went anywhere.
Yeah.
But I knew I needed it, and it sounded perfect, but I just never was able to actually get it going and actually launch it.
Yeah.
So that was the struggle, for me. And so when I came on with you and you said, "Hey, we're going to run on EOS," I was like, "Okay, I'm going to get back into this and figure out what this is."
Yeah.
And that was a great time to just be reintroduced to it.
Yeah.
And I love it. So, Jimmy, when did you first learn about EOS?
Yeah, it's funny that you kind of start my own thing in the late 90s, right? And then a little bit of our stories are in parallel. And actually a little bit of my journey is because you were my client.
Yeah, that's
so in the late
true.
90s,
that's true. Yeah,
you were a client, and
yeah.
you were catalytic and us growing my first agency.
That's right. Yeah.
Back then we were just young and had business partners.
Right.
And although I didn't really know, as I mentioned before, like the entrepreneurial thing, the small business idea, didn't really know what a visionary is, but I do remember the complexity of having multiple business partners.
Right.
And I remember hitting this idea, and I don't know if I read it or someone taught me 2 parts and I pieced them together, but I remember having this conversation with business partners that like there's two things to make a partnership work. There's the vision, which is where we're going, and there's the values, which at that point in time I wasn't thinking core values. I was thinking, what do we each value, that we want out of a business?
Right.
And I remember talking to my partners and saying, there's no right or wrong in this, right? It's just that idea of really the language right people on the bus.
Right.
That if, we can be business partners and have a different vision, and that's not going to work.
Yeah.
We can be different business partners and value different things, and that's not going to work, specifically for us, I was that kind of hustle culture before that was a thing. I was I'm going to work night and weekends or whatever. And back then I had a business partner who was much wiser than me, who's like, I ain't working night and weekends. I'm getting my job done and going home. And that was tension.
Yeah,
right.
sure.
And so that really wasn't a right or wrong. But that created enough conflict where we weren't aligned on our values, and that partnership didn't work out.
Yeah.
So going through that entrepreneurial journey and going through all that, and then both of us, ended up in that real estate marketing space.
Yep.
So 2008, no joke, like Lehman Brothers was our largest client.
Yeah.
You were in a different agency at the time, but
Yep.
for us, that's where we were. And we were just, as I said, shot dead between the eyes. And so my entrepreneurial journey started from 98, and I threw in the towel in 2010 and went corporate.
Right.
So a decade in corporate marketing leadership, kind of four and a half years in one organization and 5 in another, really stabilized my life.
Yeah.
One of the things that really did for me is when I went from an 18-person company with my name on the door to a guy in a 2,000 employee organization.
Yeah.
Even though my joke was I took a paycheck for half what I used to make and twice what I would have ever seen again. But it came with benefits and a 401k and all this
all
stuff.
All the perks,
I felt that there was so much freedom in me just being Jami.
Yeah.
Right. If I bumped into someone at my kid's soccer game, I didn't have to be like an agency owner always looking for business.
Right,
The conversation wasn't what do you do? It may be what you like to do, but it wasn't what do you do for a career, which in early years, that was all because everyone to me was a prospect. So
Right,
my whole identity in life was wrapped up in how do I generate business all the time?
Who's the next client? Exactly.
So that kind of, starting a business, being in that, and then 2010 hit and just resetting my whole career, right? And my things that I valued. I was at that point now where I valued, a paycheck and not working nights and weekends. But I did that for a decade. And in 2019, right before, this thing called COVID hit, I had the itch, and I had held on as long as I could. Like I was I was all bottled up, and I was like, I've got to do my own thing. And the worst part is, don't do this. Take it from me. Ask your wife before you quit your job.
I should have remembered that.
So I really just hit this snapping point one day, and I was vice president of a software company, vice president of sales and marketing, and I just quit. And I had no plan. And I emailed my wife and said, I just quit my job.
Not many people do that.
Don't panic.
Right.
And, I think that was really that visionary was bottled up for so long, and I didn't know what to do with it.
Right.
And that was just me jumping without a parachute.
Yeah.
And so in that, I did. I had a month to offboard where I was. Great company where I left. I'm still good friends with everybody there. And I emailed a friend of mine, Adam, and networking. I was like, hey, I'm doing this, doing my own thing, doing this consulting thing. I was really calling it a sales and marketing advisory. I wasn't going to get in the creative deliverables, but really wanted to help, sales and marketing organizations in the B2B space align sales and marketing.
Right.
And I met with him, and on my day number 2, which was Tuesday, we had coffee. And if you know Adam Landrum at all,
I do.
Very purposeful guy, right? He's going to listen really well, and he's going to ask you some hard questions.
That's right.
And we do have Adam on a podcast, so you can go find that one.
Yeah.
And he heard me out, and then he just said at breakfast, he said, "Don't do that."
Yeah.
I was like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Here's the thing." He said, "I'm an accountant who owns a marketing agency."
Yeah.
He said, "I've been doing this 20 years and I'm exhausted."
Right. Exactly.
And he said, "You're an agency guy." And he said, "I'm doing this thing called EOS. And will you come on with me? And, don't do your own thing. Come on here.
Yeah.
Bring me some energy in life and be the integrator within my organization as we roll this EOS thing out."
Right.
So that was really where I didn't even know what the concept was. Had not even heard of the book Traction.
Right.
And he didn't give me Traction. He gave me Get a Grip.
Yeah.
And
another great book.
Yeah. And when I read Get a Grip, as the creative in me, kind of the narrative is better than the textbook.
Right.
And so when I read, I'm also not I'm a binge reader.
Yeah.
Like if I'm going to finish a book, it's going to be in one sitting, or else it's going to take me decades because I have a bunch of half-read books all over my house.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
But I dug in to Get a Grip, and the thing that was so crazy was the company that I just left was 100-person employee software systems integrator that sold software and had professional services team, had a leadership team, had so much good and things going in place.
Right.
And Get a Grip is that exact thing. So I really read that book and had an immediate application to, wow, if the organization I just left had this, it'd be amazing.
Yeah.
And so bringing that kind of the academic side of that book and the applied side of I just left this organization in this book,
right,
and then going on with Adam and really having that enthusiasm and that excitement for EOS. Like my introduction came from a huge point of need for both me and a void that I had in my experience,
right,
and then a huge point for Adam. And just I stepped right into being an integrator in a business that I love. So that was really my introduction, was reading the book, accepting this job with a job description for an integrator, coming on, which we knew, as an integrator, and I'm a visionary.
Right, I know. I was going to ask you about that.
Adam is an integrator by personality, right? But he founded his company, he was in the visionary seat. So I came on and took the opportunity to really humble myself.
Yeah.
As I said, come along, Adam, and be his little buddy.
Yep.
And help him execute his vision.
Right.
In 2019. And then we formally ran on EOS. We had an implementer. We did the 2-year rollout.
Right.
And I just dug in and it just stuck. So that was started in 2019. And then, so what year is it now? 2024. So so I've been living in this 90-day world for about 5 years now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So really that gets me to where I was immersed into EOS, where I was introduced, but went in knowing that it was the wrong roles.
Right. Yeah.
Not the wrong roles, but we knew that right person, right bus.
Right.
And the seat was what we were going to do for a while. Then we see where it goes.
Right.
But I am naturally a visionary.
Yeah.
And then when we had the opportunity to get together, when I had a need, starting wonder, and was like, hey, I need an integrator. And you emailed me.
Yeah, I did.
And you're like, hey, what are you doing operationally?
Perfect timing.
Do you need any help?
Yeah, yeah.
So now let me throw it back to you and talk about once we started talking and you seeing my need and knowing that I was in the visionary seat and I was looking for my integrator. What did that look like from your experience of being in the visionary seat before, not the integrator? And what excited about you about this opportunity?
Yeah, I think, going back to owning my own agency, I had to sit in that visionary role, and it never felt comfortable. It just wasn't. I'm an operations guy. I always have been an operations guy. I jump into the ditch and I help get things done, and then I go back, to doing what I'm doing. But I mean, I'm just that operational. That's my personality, And so I always sat in that visionary role, and I had to help cast vision, and I can do that. If I have to be in a role like a visionary, I can do the role, but it doesn't energize me. It doesn't bring me energy, and it doesn't really get me going like operations does. So I think that that coming out of that agency ownership, I immediately went into some operational type roles, contractor type roles and things like that. And then when you and I connected, and we started talking about EOS, and I started to understand EOS and Visionary Integrator, it really excited me. And because I really looked at you as definitely a visionary, that you're in that right role, and then me as an integrator, I was like, that's perfect for me. I did the Colby assessment with you, and it nailed me right to that operations integrator type role. And that's what really got me excited about the opportunity to work with you and be a part of Wonder and do EOS, is because I saw that we matched up perfectly in that visionary integrator role.
Yeah.
And I think that in EOS, it's so important that you have a visionary and integrator that understand each other, are in the right seat, and can work together well.
Yeah.
So I think that that's what really got me excited, and what helped me it just kind of took the blinders off to say, this is where you should have been all along, is in that integrator type role, is what really is your right seat, know.
And for anyone listening who's not familiar with the terms that we're using, visionary and integrator, the concept there is, in my language, before I had the term visionary and integrator, I actually just talked about someone's heads up and someone's heads down. Right. And there's a time where, a founder of an organization, can be both.
Sure.
But there does come a logical point where most, founders or leaders hit a point where it was like, hey, I had a vision. I had energy and excitement, and I saw a need.
Yep.
So I founded something.
Right.
And there was a lot of vision in that. But then there's some natural hurdles in business where that original founder may start tapping out on what their actual strengths are. And that could be because they're natural visionary and they're stuck in the integrator role.
Right.
And there's too much operation and they can't be heads up. Or the opposite of that, they're naturally an integrator. Like they saw a need in the market and they filled it.
Right.
And now they're so heads down that there's not really a vision. So for me, when I talk about visionary integrator and was starting something new, I going back to that role where I was the integrator at Up and Up, and then Adam was the visionary.
Yeah.
COVID hit, right? So I came on to Up and Up back then in 2019.
Right.
It was the COVID season for me. For us on that team, it was actually, it was a good business during COVID.
Right.
The niche that we were in wasn't, necessarily hit as hard as other industries. We had some correction to work through, like, all right, how do we do this work from home thing? How do we do hiring and staffing? And what does that look like? But there came a point for me where kind of three things hit. One is I was an integrator, not a visionary. So that humility that I had to say, I can do this for a while.
Right.
Really started getting to the point where I was like, to grow this organization in a way to hit this 3-year picture and Adam's 10-year target, my visionary, instincts were kicking in.
Yeah.
Which meant that I was going to take the company in a different direction. That was the only thing I knew to do.
Right.
And Adam was like, no, we want to go in this direction. And so we really just had a candid conversation. I was like, I think I've served my role here.
Sure.
Got you in a good spot, but the time has come for me to do something on my own.
Yeah.
And I was turning 50.
Yeah.
And I don't know, 50 is a funny thing, man.
It is, man. It does things to you.
So it was the first thing where I kind of hit this, wow, I'm now, at that point, had spent 9 years on the corporate side, 3 years now in another agency, and I'm like, I'm turning 50, and I'm a vision. I need to do my own thing, and I felt like my wick was burning short.
Right.
And so, when I told Adam I'm going to do something I don't know what it is, really my visionary side just kicked in, and what I ended up doing, which is where a lot of people say, how are you running on EOS? Because it appears like you're just hopping all over the place.
Yeah.
I really set out to just start a company based on the needs that I could serve in 90-day cycles. So I started off saying like, all right, I'm going to consult for 90 days. I'm going to see where it goes. And did that over quarter until about 18 months in, Wonder became this thing.
Right.
And then we actually ran for 3 quarters in Wonder, kind of behind the scenes with me and our other co-founder, Mark.
Yep.
And didn't introduce Mark really to EOS, but talked about, hey, we're just going to live in this 90-day world.
Right.
And then, 3 quarters into that, we had this idea that said, if we get some calls from clients that, previous clients or people that know either of us,
Mm-hmm.
and we have the opportunity to serve them as an agency, let's do that.
Yeah.
And so that really was January of 2024. And
yeah.
so, and oddly enough, like January 2nd, I got that call.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It was a client of mine from 15 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
And it was a really good client of mine from
Mm-hmm.
15 years ago, where we had great relational equity. We had high trust in each other.
Yeah.
And got on the phone to figure out what their needs were, and immediately found out they ran on EOS.
Yeah. Yep.
And so it was really cool to have this now shared belief in our first conversation that vision is important.
Right.
And that once you have vision, then a plan is important.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you have a plan, now how do you set the priorities
Yeah.
to knock those objectives out?
Right.
And so it was the perfect alignment of where we had a client who had those things in place.
Mm-hmm.
We understood what that looks like, and we had created some marketing concepts that allowed us to do that well. So we did that for 2 quarters,
Mm-hmm.
picked up some clients, and ended up with this model
Yeah.
that really resonated. We got traction on the business model, kind of
Exactly.
the product market fit. And then in April,
Yep.
when you reached out,
Yep. Yeah.
and it was like, all right, this thing's happening.
Yeah.
We're getting traction. And so if I'm going to grow this,
Mm-hmm.
then we're going to start day one running on EOS.
Yep.
And I'm going to hire an integrator.
Yeah.
So, that was really feeling like the right seat for me.
Yep.
And so when led us to our first conversation, this
Right.
is what I'm doing. You're like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
We actually took the Integrator Visionary assessment.
That's right.
I'm a 68 and an integrator.
Yeah.
And that you were what? 92?
Yeah, like 92. Yeah, I was way up there.
And then, I talk a good bit about the tools in the toolbox.
Yep.
And Colby is something I'm super passionate about.
Yeah.
Got certified in it. And then we looked at that and
Yeah,
we're like,
that
man,
was like, yeah,
total compliments here.
total compliment. Yeah,
And then, right person, right seat.
yeah, it confirmed all of that.
So now, like where we are today
Yeah.
with Wonder, what's it feel like to really be in the right seat? What's it feel like in this first 6 months
Mm-hmm.
of us going through, the foundational or focus day with Andrew, our implementer, Andrew
Yep.
Geisel, VB1, VB2, and now our first quarter. Like, tell me your experience with EOS now that we're actually in it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I had read the book years ago, and I came into EOS, and it was just a blank slate for me because I didn't really remember everything I read, and I didn't know all the tools, and I didn't know how it all worked. So I appreciated you making it a point that we started off on EOS on day one, so that we were fully integrated into EOS and running the business that way. And if I had known about EOS, or if I had actually been able to implement EOS years ago, it would have changed the way I did business. I mean, it would have changed everything. And I think EOS is one of the most amazing business operating systems out there. It is amazing. But yeah, so, jumping right in with Andrew, who's done an amazing job as our implementer, and going through those vision days that we did, vision building days, was great. I mean, we were able to build out, what the foundation of our company was going to be, what the vision we were going to set up for 90 days, for 1 year, for 3 years, for 10 years, and understanding where we wanted the company to go. And we actually had a clear vision of how we're going to get there, creating our core values, our core focus. I mean, putting all those things together. I mean, we were in a meeting recently, and I was just saying to our staff, I've worked in a lot of companies where we had core values and core focus, but you heard about them occasionally, but they weren't always in your face, and they weren't something that we actually ran the company by. Core values and core focus, So maybe core focus, but not core values. And we're using core values as something that we hire people based on core values. We make decisions based on core values. We bring on clients based on core values. Everything is based around our core values, and that was something new that EOS really brought to the table. So that's really something big that came out of those vision building days for me. And then just learning all the tools in the toolbox. I mean, the scorecards, how to run an L10, all the different things that we use that have, again, changed the way that I look at how we run our business. And it's taken the leadership team, and now it's going to start taking the staff as we are continuing to roll it out. And it just brings everybody together to talk about issues, to solve issues, and not let things just linger out there. So, the process for me has been amazing. It's opened my eyes to so many things that we can do, but it also gives you such a great framework and structure for how to do things. And that's what I love about it. And it does give you traction. It gives you a way to take care of things that otherwise would just lay on the side and just always be there and never get resolved. And, when issues and things like that don't get resolved, it drives your staff crazy. I would do surveys with the staff and they'd be like, well, I don't feel like, any of my concerns ever get taken care of or anybody ever listens to them. Well, it's because we don't know, we don't have a process for doing that, and now we do. We have a scorecard. We have, rocks. We have issues list. We have things that we talk about every week. And so I just think that the whole process has just been amazing. And I'm so grateful that we started out on EOS and didn't try to pick it up later on, and then have to redo the way we're doing our business. So we started off on the right foot. And that's huge for us. I mean, it's going to make us so much more successful down the road. And it already has.
Correct.
We're already, I didn't expect for us to go from, day one, kind of making the announcement on July 1st, having three or four clients right out the gate, and just suddenly growing the way we did. And if we didn't have EOS in place, I don't think we would have been able to handle it.
Yeah, it's been cool for me. I resisted starting another agency. But me kind of knowing my person, my purpose, and what I'm passionate about. I have had the opportunity, now I would say in 3 companies that were not my own, where I played a key role, to actually what I call build a brand from the inside out.
Right.
Actually get who we are, define who that is, get the internal culture around, rallying around that, and then what I believe is if your employees believe it, then your customers and prospects will buy it.
Exactly.
And so that was really my natural state to be like, that's what I love doing. And I finally hit the point where I have the opportunity to build a business around that. And that there's this abstract kind of gray area, I think, on the interpretation of core values. And I think COVID shook the world up, right? And yes, in many ways, everybody acknowledges that. But really what it did is it took a lot of companies that may have not had clearly defined culture. It's kind of like it's like a downpour. If you like to fish, which I'm not great at.
I love to fish, but I've never caught a fish.
Exactly. I'm not good at catching. I'm good at fishing. But when the night before, when it just pours and then the water's all murky and you don't know where the fish are and everybody's disoriented, like that's kind of what happened. We end up in this really murky state.
Right.
And I think companies of all shapes and sizes were like, well, now that we've got decentralized team members, we've got remote and hybrid, and we've got all this stuff shaken up. Like, if you don't know who you are now, you can't really. It's almost you weren't stable, right? You got to figure like this is who we are.
Right.
This is what makes us different. This is why you should come to work for us now in this scenario.
Right.
And I think core values have taken on this very meaningful role. That in all the podcasts so far, without leading to that, is what everyone's talking about. Really, the foundation of their EOS success has been their core values.
Absolutely.
And what was cool for me is being a brand guy and marinating on wonder for 9 months and what I wanted it to be and what I wanted it to look like. I think there's a difference between what the core values of this organization is. What my core values are as a founder and as a visionary, and how those feed into it. But they may or may not be a one-to-one match. And so as we went into our, I forget if it was Focus Day or VB1, and as a team, me, you, and Mark did the exercise with Andrew, which I'm used to facilitating these exercises. So now, I was a participant, and Andrew's approach was freaking awesome.
It was,
And he took us through an exercise that as he facilitated it, I had thoughts on what I wanted the core values to be. But it became an exercise where me, you, and Mark all got to collaborate. And I'm a high fact finder in Colby. So therefore words have meaning, right? So the difference between collaboration and consensus is really important to me. As the founder, I was like, I'm not looking for consensus. But this is the opportunity to collaborate. And we really ended up with some core values that were the essence of what I really desired.
Right.
But we all had ownership in
Yeah,
them.
that's
We
right.
all put them together.
We
and
did, yeah.
then, from a timeline, that was, right now we're in November. That was June.
Yeah. It
And
took us.
we've moved
Yeah.
pretty quick
Yeah.
through this process, but we marinated on them.
We did.
And we had essence.
They
We didn't
changed a
have-
couple
Yeah,
times,
they
yeah.
changed a couple times.
Yeah.
We didn't have the exact language.
That's right.
And then as we got to, our first quarterly, which was last week.
Yeah.
And then we looked at the language and we put the language to them.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, they've landed where I feel like this is me.
Yeah.
I feel like this is our culture. I feel like
Absolutely.
this is wonder. And
Yeah.
so those core values of own it.
Yep.
Right. And then we have be curious, be generous, be courageous.
Yep.
And then outshine.
Outshine. Yep.
And those 5 values, we just rolled out to our team this week in our first quarterly kickoff.
That's right.
It was amazing.
It was
It was
amazing.
almost like I'm getting emotional.
I know, yeah.
Because as our team talked about
Yeah.
what that looked like and how those were what they were excited about.
Exactly.
And so we've gone from really building our leadership team,
Yeah.
rolling out EOS 6 months. Now we've got our team.
Yeah.
We have 5 full-time employees right now.
Yeah.
But we're growing really quick.
We are.
And for me to be able to, kind of ask the question of, if you're at the bus stop,
Yeah.
and this bus pulled up, and that little ticker up top
Yeah.
said, these are the 5 core values of this
Right.
bus. Do you want to get on it?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're on the right bus?
Right. Yeah.
And to see everybody's heads nod,
Yeah. Yeah.
was just super exciting.
Yeah,
So-
and your whole exercise about putting behaviors to those,
Yeah.
and everybody just rattling off, and we just had these long lists of behaviors that supported each of those core values was just, everybody was coming up with such great ideas and
Yeah.
great things, and everybody was so behind it. It just clicked. Everything was just clicking and gelling so well. So it was really a cool exercise.
Yeah, and that was that. So that's kind of a new concept for me too, which is, So I was a part of an organization, an amazing culture called Keymark.
Yep.
And we had values. We had 15 of them, and this was before I knew anything about EOS.
Right.
They still have those values. The culture there is amazing, but
Yeah.
we had a great opportunity to build the brand from the inside out there.
Yeah.
And when I look at those values, really, they are cultural things, but they're the behavioral side.
Right.
15, I think now for us
Yeah.
is too many. People can't really retain that.
Yeah. Yeah.
As Andrew, our implementer, says, everybody remembers the 3 Stooges, no one remembers the 7 Dwarfs.
That's right. Yeah.
So there's this sweet spot of about 4, but
Yeah.
we've got 5
Right.
for
Yeah.
now.
And that's good. I'm over 50. I can't remember
Yes.
anything more than 5.
But when you really take, I think how a lot of people do the core values, there's kind of 2 paths. There's the integrity and honesty, which is like that's just table stakes to
Right.
have a company.
Yeah.
And then there's we've got 37 or we've got 15 or we've got 10.
Right.
I think where we've landed is really cool, which is we have 5 core values,
Mhm.
and then when you talk about what does it look like
Yeah.
to live those out,
Right.
what does it look like to celebrate that when you see it?
Exactly.
Now those behaviors start getting listed, and you can have 5 or 10 under each
Yeah.
core value.
Yeah.
And so there are
Which is brilliant.
30,
Yeah.
40, 50 things that
That's
we
right.
all celebrate,
Exactly.
but they all line up to,
Yeah.
these 5 core values.
Yeah. 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 I love that.
So in addition to core values, what's another component of EOS that you're excited about?
Yeah, I love the weekly L10s. That's one of my favorite things that we do. I think it's critical to what we do. It's a chance for the leadership team to get together. We have an hour-and-a-half meeting where we talk about issues and things that we need to solve every week. But part of that is rocks that we set. So we have rocks that are things that we need to solve within 90 days. So we set rocks. They're goals for the company, and then they're assigned to each individual in the leadership team. So we each have our rocks that we have to work on, and we check on those every week. So we check on the progress, and we hold each other accountable to making sure we complete those rocks, and we have 90 days to do that. So I think that's a big thing within the EOS system is, setting goals and making sure that and checking on those goals every week, holding each other accountable to those and making sure they get completed. I think a lot of companies, they set goals and nobody checks on them, nobody talks about them, and you don't know if anything's getting accomplished. But EOS has a system to make sure that those things are being talked about and looked at every single week. And those L10s are critical meetings for that because the leadership team actually gets to come together, look at the rocks, and talk about, okay, where are we on this rock? What's going on? Are we having issues? Are we on track? Are we off track? and talk about what's going on with those different rocks. And I think that's a key thing for us because we're setting pretty lofty goals right now for ourselves because we're young, we're growing, and there's a lot going on. So there's a lot of goals that we're setting for us as a company, and then even individuals within the leadership team that we need to do as well. And so I think those rocks are just a key part of what we're doing.
So, common question.
Yeah.
I assume you have many hats that you're wearing.
I do.
And I assume you don't have enough time to do all the things you have to do.
I don't.
So where do you find time to work on a rock? How do you fit that in? Like on top of everything else, now you're telling me I got to do these other things?
Yeah, that's right. You do. I think we use a platform called 90, and it's a great place where you can see everything that's going on within your organization. It keeps your scorecard, it keeps your rocks, it keeps your to-do list, everything in one place. So I keep that open all day, and I just keep glancing at what I need to be working on, and I just have to carve out time to work on my rocks. I mean, it's not something I can do every single day, but I have to be I have to be deliberate about and disciplined to go in there and look at my rocks and say, okay, I need to put in some milestones. There's a place you can put milestones in there and some notes. And I say this, today I at least need to work on these things, or I need to schedule these meetings to get this rock moving, or do some things to make sure I'm progressing with this. I mean, I have, a lot of cases I have 90 days to get it done. So, a lot of things take 90 days.
Yeah.
A lot of the rocks we have aren't something we can get done in a week or 2 weeks. It takes 90 days to complete it. But, you have to put some milestones in. You have to put some things in place to actually get that rock moving so you can see progress on it. And so I can report back to the leadership team to say, hey, I'm getting this rock moving because I'm accountable to you guys, to the rest of the team, to you and Mark, to be able to say, I'm off track, and here's why I'm off track, because I haven't touched it.
Yeah.
So that's an issue.
Yeah.
And we have a thing where we say, let's drop that down as an issue
Yeah.
and talk about it.
Yeah, drop it down.
You drop it down. Why are we not getting this done? And why is that an issue? So that's, again, one of the great things about EOS. I mean, nothing doesn't get discussed.
Yeah.
Everything gets discussed. And everything has either becomes an issue or a to-do on a to-do list or something.
Yeah.
So nothing slips through the cracks.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite part of EOS is just it mitigates drama.
Yeah.
And in a way that really drama kind of evaporates.
It does.
Or if it keeps reappearing, you may have a core values issue and you have tools to address it.
Yeah.
But so I think, as far as our listeners go, there's probably three different types of listeners right now. There's those who are interested in EOS and may have never heard about it until this podcast, or they may have heard about it and they're listening to this podcast and say, hey, I want to learn more.
Yeah.
There's those that are running on EOS themselves, like they're following it, they're implementing, but they're not yet with an implementer. And then there's those, with a formal implementer and are formally running on EOS. So those first two categories, considering it or not running with a formal implementer, what advice or recommendations would you have to them?
Yeah, I would say if you're considering EOS, there's lots of ways you can get involved. I would say, first of all, just do it. Just jump in. There's lots of implementers all over the country. There's lots of implementers here in Greenville, and they will do a free 90-minute session with you.
Yeah.
And they'll come in not expecting anything. They'll come in and just explain it to you. They'll explain the process. They'll explain EOS to you, and they'll help you understand what it's like to get started in it.
Yeah.
There's also the books you can read.
Yeah.
So you can catch any of the books, the traction book, What the Heck is EOS? There's lots of books you can read to better understand it. But I would highly encourage those people to talk to an implementer and do that 90-minute session because an implementer makes the whole process so much easier.
Yeah.
For those that are self-implementing, again, I would also talk to an implementer. I have a company that I'm very close to, and they have been self-implementing. But I recommended that they talk to Andrew. Yeah. Sent Andrew over there to talk to them and introduce them to 90 as well, the platform they can use, because self-implementing is not easy. It's hard. Yeah. And there's so many parts of EOS that you miss when you're self-implementing that you don't do properly, and all those pieces that you've heard me and Jamie talk about today. All those pieces work together and make the whole process work the way it's supposed to, and they're so important. So I would say in either of those two scenarios, I would reach out to an implementer and try to do that 90-minute free session and talk to somebody, because there's no reason why you shouldn't do that. Yeah. I mean, it's free. It's talking to an implementer, and I would take full advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And well, cool. This is, for us, we talk all day about this stuff.
We do, yeah. And we're excited about it.
So it's cool to share this story with everybody else.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to acknowledge, we're a team of 5 right now. So
Yeah.
we're actually, we started running on EOS with a team of 3, which is a little bit outside of what EOS says it's meant for. They're, 10 to 250 employees. But because our operational experience in agencies and my experience in, running on EOS, like we understand the challenges that we have at scale right now. So we do have challenges. And that's because we're not at the point where we have enough employees to really fully embrace all this. But, we have goals that are to blow through that 10 employee count really quick.
Yeah.
So we set that foundation. So, I do want to just, anybody who's listening who's 1 or 2 people, it's never too soon. You don't have to wait. There's some inherent complexities that you'll hit, but due to size and scale.
Sure.
But at the same time, just starting sooner is always better.
Absolutely.
And so very excited. I assume our journey is going to evolve, and over the next 6, 9, 12 months, we may drop another pod like this in to talk about our journey.
Talk about how we're progressing.
But this was fun for me.
It was fun. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
And we appreciate everybody out there who's listening. And if we can ever help you in your journey, connect you with people, give you some podcast episodes to talk about. If you want to, take your journey and let's talk through that, reach out to us. But
happy to talk more.
That's it for today.
Yeah.